Hot. We'll just
That's
go straight
fine.
hot.
I'm cool that way too.
He's cool that way too. Welcome to another
Either way.
either way craft show live stream. Either way it was pandemic only. We're back for the moment to hang out and do things and hang out with you and hang out with whoever else is involved. Today on the show, really, it's not today on the show. I kind of just expect the Jeffs to be here from this point forward. I think they're just kind of like Jeff Fagan from Reach Films is here with us. Say hello, Jeff Fagan.
Thanks for having me. Hey, what's going on, everybody?
And then we have the one and only
Can't see
John Cena's chest hair.
Oh man.
The man that puts beards in neck beards.
Yeah. Look at that. Let's get in there again.
I'm just trash talking.
Came all the way from
No, I'm
Scrubs.
fine.
Dr. Beard Vasse, not a real doctor. Hello, sir. How are you?
I play one on TV. I'm doing good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how are you? I haven't actually gotten the chance to talk to you, even though we work together.
I know it's been a busy
in
week.
days.
It's been a busy
Yeah.
week.
It has. So,
I see that Mr.
yeah.
Pickles is in the old Chatsky there with the. What about John Cena's chest hair?
it's the
there's a
same
whole
as
story
my
there.
it's the same as my top of my head,
whole-
Mr. Pickles. You can't
The
see
whole
it.
story there, Mr. Pickles. So today on the show, the major thing I wanted to talk about was a couple of things that I've come across. I've been watching a lot of, like, getting back into YouTube and kind of following up on content. I've stepped away for a while, and there's a lot of videos that come out. And I know in the past, we have a little bit of a checkered past with some people. Shout out to Will. I don't think he watches anymore, but do you remember how mad that guy used to get at us? Like, he would just get hateful.
But he also became a very good friend.
He did become a good friend. So shout out to Will. I love the guy.
There you go.
Um,
It worked out.
It did.
It did. But it's back in the day of when you're trying to post content, you're trying to make relevant content. I see a lot of YouTubers out there doing that now, and I see stuff, and there's some things I come across where my mind just can't fully grasp some of the conversations, and the majority of them have to do with, like, really crazy pixel peep stuff, like high ISOs, and they're getting into that world again. And the thing that I find the most amazing is that nobody's on YouTube talking about the hustle. And when they do,
Yeah, for sure.
what you get is people out there that, like, oh, well, the hustle is, I know everything about every camera. I can tell you the pixel pitch of every single sensor on the planet. And hey, I'm glad you know all those details. That's fantastic. And I'm going to throw this question to you two guys to start out with, is like, why the hell do you think people are so obsessed with, and what's the appeal? Let me rephrase it that way. What's the appeal with being so obsessed with, like, the minutia of cameras and calling that filmmaking? What's the obsession there?
What do you think, Jeff?
I was going to say that from a person that is very technical aspected, like I actually understand it to a certain extent. I like to know those things. Do I know every camera's pixel? No, I don't, and I will not at any time. I mean, it's too much information to have about something that's so nuanced that doesn't actually I'm going to get ripped for this. It doesn't matter. And it does matter, but it doesn't matter. Like, I don't need to know the Venice if I'm not shooting on the Venice. Like, what's the point of it? If I'm shooting on the Venice, yeah, I'll do some white pages and look at some stuff, and figure all of it out. But at the end of the day, it doesn't actually fully matter to me. Like, I want what's going to give me the best image. If it has dead pixels, whole different situation. Like, I need to know if it's got dead pixels in it. And that's going to be sensor to sensor. So, yeah. But I could go much deeper into it. It's a thing to me.
Expand as much as you want.
Like,
That's the point. Like,
it is a thing to me, because I think pixel peeping takes away from storytelling and truth. I've seen a lot of people on a different. I've been doing research too, Drew, because we haven't been on here in a while. I saw somebody talking about how the Russos aren't real filmmakers because there's a desaturated palette in Civil War.
Ooh, I saw some of that. I saw something about. Yeah,
Like,
I saw something.
What?
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
I didn't see it, but it doesn't surprise me in this YouTuber only
I
now
know.
age. Yeah.
But don't you think there's been a shift? And Jeff, I'm not Fagan. I'm not knocking you out of the convo. But don't you think there's been a little bit of shift in the YouTube space? I talk to Mr. Pickles about this all the time. One day he'll be on the show. But one of the things that we talk about is the amount of negative and just negativity. There are guys whose entire channels do nothing but, for example, I'm a Star Wars fan, and I hate a lot of new Star Wars, but there's guys whose entire channels wouldn't exist except for the fact that all they do is shit on Star Wars. Literally.
Exactly.
They just
Yeah,
Cleveland
you bring up a
Steam or
good point.
something.
Yep.
You bring up a good point. I remember I saw this guy who had like a financial channel, and I'm sure you're going to be like, oh, I know who you're talking about. Huge financial channel, but then he has like these Star Wars videos, and all of them are about how Star Wars is at the end of its line, and he goes into these analytical videos about Kathleen Kennedy, and that, when I saw those videos, that's when I had the same thought as you, where I'm like, you know, YouTube, there's a huge sect of it now that's all about negativity in certain sects, whether it's cameras, movies, certain IPs, whatever, and it's crazy, but it gets views. And so I guess ultimately it gets pushed because it's making money.
Yep.
It's a good point. So let's circle back to the tech. Why do you think, Jeff, because Fagan, you're younger than us by a decade or more. and you grew up with emerging camera technology being much more part of your life. Me and Jeff had to adapt towards it, right? Because we came from the film world and we adapted the other way. What do you think it is about that? What do you think it is that just people just click on this idea of tech and all that stuff? Where's that come from?
So I'm going to say something. It's not too controversial, but I think some people may take it that way. I think there's a huge emphasis on YouTube content creator only filmmakers who just create content on YouTube and worry about stuff that you kind of alluded to in the beginning that you don't have to worry about in production. It's more about how a tool helps you when you're working on production, not like what are the pixels in the noise grain pattern in ISO 3000. You know, we're looking at a good image on set. We're not looking for the noise grain pattern. We want to just use the best thing that tells the story. And I feel like that's lost in the new generation because they're not telling stories. They're creating YouTube videos. And it's a different process. And to guys like, I can totally understand why you guys look at it a certain way. I look at it a certain way sometimes too, because I come from a filmmaking background and went from becoming a filmmaker to doing more content creation. And it comes from like how people use their tools, and it's different. And you have a lot of filmmakers who are not making YouTube videos. They're working, you know. And I'm not saying YouTube isn't work, but it's just they're doing different work with their cameras, and so that emphasis gets lost, which is kind of unfortunate.
And look, to back you up, to me, I've ranted on this before, but it's still a true statement for myself. And watching content's made it worse. I'm not saying that YouTube content is, again, not work, but a lot of times I hear YouTube content creators refer to it as work. And arguably, I watched a video where the guy called it work, and all he did was there was jump cuts in the frame, but there was no real major cutaways. There was no, and he's talking about camera testing and all this stuff, and all he's doing is talking to the camera. Well, that's awesome. It's information. It's like a podcast thing, but I wouldn't necessarily call that work. How are you going to show me, how's that going to get applied in a practical sense across the board? And that comes down to like a lot of creative discussions, right? Yeah. There's a lot of creative that happens that goes nowhere. I mean, I sell that for a living. I sell nose for a living, you know? And so I just find it fascinating. And it's another question for you guys in that sense of like, do you think the pandemic has left it even worse than it was? Because now, where I would argue that movies once had sort of a sacred, like going to the theater had a level of sacred environment to it. Now, I mean, shit's getting dumped directly on here, which further emphasizes maybe another perspective. Do you feel like the art of filmmaking is it being lost to short clips, or do you feel like the art of filmmaking will reemerge? What is your take on where we are with that?
I personally think that it's reemerging in a certain sense. You have to have a name for it to be reemerging right now.
Like Oppenheimer.
And you can. That's what I was going to use as numbers, but at the same time, it didn't outperform Barbie. You know, so it's just like everybody wanted to go see it, but also how many? If there's so many purists on the Christopher Nolan, I know it's the Christopher Nolan, Zack Snyder. You know, that whole realm of different filmmakers that way that just have their camps. You know, that are going to go against James Gunn just because he is now the head of DC, instead of Zack Snyder's universe, kind of thing. Like, Christopher Nolan's always going to bring in people. Marty Scorsese's always going to bring in people to a theater. I'm definitely one of those people. Michael Mann is going to bring me back to a movie theater. It's definitely, to me, certain filmmakers are doing it, not necessarily the movies themselves that are doing it now.
And they're bringing people in to see film, like to watch on film.
Yeah.
Look at Oppenheimer. Only 31 theaters. And when I went to go see it, 5 weeks after it started playing in theaters, it was still a sold out show. Seeing it specifically in 70 millimeter.
Yeah.
They definitely bring people out.
So. Yeah, we don't have a 70 millimeter here where I'm at, but it's still sold out to this day. Oppenheimer is.
Wow.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think it's a fascinating thing because to me, I think I have not seen Oppenheimer. I get that it's 3 hours. It feels like it's a film. Like it feels like a hearty meal. It is the movie you're going to lean into. But then if I go and look at like something to me like Barbie, not my movie, not for me, especially not me. Not even really for my daughters yet. They're too young for that. But the wild side about all of that for me is that the amount of effort, there's so much production design. My understanding is that the photography matches that the sound design is like, it's back to the same things like Oppenheimer, except now you took a toy that was just a plastic doll and created a whole new world. It's not, it's based on a static toy. And so in some ways I feel like they have to create something even more additional. So I don't know. I think in some aspects, I wonder if the value of Barbie may not be a cultural hit for everyone, but the value of Barbie, arguably as a film, is that it's back to like effort being put into these movies, and it's not just cranking out a product.
Oh, definitely. I've heard it's amazing, honestly, and I do like Greta Gerwig's movies. I think she's a fantastic director. My problem with Barbie out of anything is now that it's made so much from the purpose of the studio, what's Barbie 2 going to be? Because I have a feeling it's going to be a lot worse than whatever Barbie is. Because I'm like you, not made for me, that's perfectly fine. Will I watch it? Yes, I'll watch it. I'm not going to watch it in the theater, though. I will wait. And looks like I'm not going to watch Oppenheimer in the theater either, because I've been trying, but I just can't do it.
Yeah.
Fagan, have you seen other stuff in the theater? Have you been back to the theater aside from Oppenheimer?
So I've only seen 3 movies, including Oppenheimer, in the theater in the past year. The other one is Top Gun. I made sure to go see it in the IMAX.
Me too.
And then I saw Wakanda Forever, and I was a little disappointed because I saw it in the IMAX as well, and I was like, I didn't need to see this in the IMAX. But that's it. Those are the 3 movies I've seen in the theater over the past, over like since May of last year.
Yeah.
I only take Guardians 3 for me, and that's my list as well, without Oppenheimer.
Yeah, I did see Guardians 3. I was in Phoenix, Arizona on a work trip, rode my bike. I stayed an extra day, rode my bike, and it was the afternoon. It was hot as shit in Phoenix, like it's nuclear. So I was like, I'm going to go see a movie. And so I was like, Guardians was out. So I saw Guardians. I wouldn't have seen it otherwise. Not because I hate it. It's just not my jam anymore, like theatrically. Those.
Yeah. They're
but
not
I did take,
must-see in the theater anymore.
No, none of the Marvel stuff. Which comes back to a point we'll make in a second. Which the only other stuff I chased was I saw Indiana Jones because the girls wanted to see it, and that was fun. Taking your kids to see a movie you grew up with was kind of interesting, and really that was we saw some other kids movie. I don't remember what the hell it was now, but that's where we went with it. I think the other challenge is: do you think one of the things I find interesting is I've been partnering with a guy, a TikToker named Ed Dudes. And Ed he's a chunk of followers. He's like one of those million follower type guys. And Ed, his content for a long time was literally, he got famous because he held a Sharpie under his nose or something. And he's silly. He's a good looking guy. I get it. Ed does his thing and I respect him 100%. But we partnered to start making some children's content because of our kids. And we thought it would be fun. So we're making like this vibe. There's a little bit of like a little Mr. Rogers homage throughout the whole piece. But what I find really fascinating, Ed's 10 years younger as well. And Ed's very much part of that TikTok generation. So Ed constantly wants to put out something new. Whereas to me, I'm like, no, we're going to follow the schedule. We're going to put out 1 episode a month because it it takes time and resources to create these. That we're making them for free. We're betting on the long game. It takes one episode, but he constantly wants to put out new content, which isn't a zing. I think it's part of the new culture. Jeff Fagan, have you experienced some of that from whether it's client relationships or business relationships? Are you seeing that the world has shifted to where maybe the amount of content, as Marshall McLuhan once said, the medium is the message, and now it's like the amount of the medium that you're providing. Do you see that that's a reality for you?
Oh, absolutely. When I was doing video filming and editing for Cardone, we had to do at least a video a day. Now, sometimes we could do a short form video a day. Sometimes it could be a long form. The fact that sometimes I cranked out like an 8-minute video in a day, like really surprised me at the end of the day. I didn't know how I did it, but like we had to put, and it wasn't just me, by the way, we had a team of 5 people. So we had to have, at least for that guy's channel, it's not everyone's channel, we had to have multiple videos ready to go for the channel per day. So it would be like a short in the morning and a short at night, and maybe one long form video during the day, or sometimes 2 long form videos during the day. It really depends, I think, on what kind of content you're doing and if the audience is there for it. But if it is there and you're going to get the views, then they're just going to keep churning out content because they're just going to keep kind of ranking in the AdSense.
So that's interesting. So can you talk about that experience at all? Because I don't care about the Grant part. I care more about like obviously he's a big name, but he's a gentleman that has, or his empire is a content machine. I've not talked to that many people on the inside of a content machine. So your team, you have 5, was expected to put out 4 to 5 videos a day. Is that what you're?
Yeah. Now what made it a little easier was a lot of the times we could repurpose content. So, we'd take older videos, or we'd take, sometimes we'd have to go back and look at recorded speeches or like, conferences that Grant would do. And the whole goal of the video would be, you got to find something that adds value. So I would go and I would find like sometimes it would be 4 minutes, sometimes it would be 8 minutes. I would find this big chunk of value added content, and then I would go make a video out of it. And I would have to go add B-roll, whether it's generated by us or whether it was generated on like a stock website. But that was kind of our biggest thing, especially when we didn't have content that was like from Grant or from his marketing team where they're like, we need this video out today. If there wasn't that, they're like, go find content that you could repurpose, make content out of it, because there's tons of it. I mean, it's like every time we do a podcast, there are quotes that we could take and repurpose and just use that one part to generate, awareness for that episode we did or for the channel. And that was kind of their mentality. Everything we do generates eyes, and you get them in this one video, they may never have been here before, and they'll watch 10 other ones. So that was kind of their mentality of do as many as you can, but it all has to be value added, because if it's not value added, then why is anybody going to come watch these videos? Like, just because it's Grant, like he's got to offer something. So that was the cool part that I did learn there, is every piece we did, especially on a daily basis, value added no matter what.
That's fascinating.
It just would be different.
Yeah, it's almost like working broadcast news in some ways. That's like an old formula from the news side of things, where it's like, hey, turn it and burn it. We don't care if there's a lead or if there's not one. Not make one up per se, though arguably we could say.
You're kind of making it up though out of something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's interesting to me. It's. Do you feel like this is not a zing on Grant or any of his content, by the way? I'm just talking about this machine idea. Do you feel like though the fact that you're just turning out content? Yes, there's a value add to the proprietary network it may be on, but do you feel like the content is relevant, like long lasting past a flash in the pan?
Yeah, I think we got to a point that you're thinking of where there was also burnout on our side, where like, how much of this content are you going to do before it's kind of like the same stuff? How good is the content you're doing? Not everybody could put a full length video out in a day like I could. Some of the team, they had their strengths. So some of them were really good at filming, some of them were really good at editing, some of them were only really good at vertical video. So, a lot of those guys, they couldn't put out a video a day, and I think that kept them from burning out. I wasn't there to like long enough, like after I wasn't there for years, so I couldn't tell you years later if that still works. I can tell you there's not as much video that he puts out today as he did when I was there. But the team's a lot smaller now than it was when I was there. So it kind of makes
Interesting.
sense that they don't have as much. But I don't know, like, you know, the other company I work for now, which is Jazz Is, we don't put as much content out, but then we get a lot of views on the content we do put out. So it's hard. I think it's all audience dependent and like what your niche is. If that kind of content can last. And I think with what he's doing, if you guys don't know, he's like a real estate dude. He kind of like teaches real estate and investing for real estate, which is somewhat general because anybody can get into real estate if you have money to put into it. And I think that's why that kind of stuff works for him, because you could almost, another channel I see that kind of does the same thing is like Think Media, where they give a lot of really good YouTube insight, but then they'll also do like in a year, 10 videos may have said the exact same thing, just recorded differently at a different time. And they'll do it because they're getting the views. Why not? They're bringing in new people when they do that video, and some of those new people haven't seen it. I would hope that it works. I just haven't firsthand seen that, you know, doing the same content, like how to grow to 1,000 subscribers and giving the exact same information on how to grow to 1,000 subscribers. When you do that same video 10 times a year, did you really net like the same in every video, the same amount of like AdSense and viewership and all of that? I don't know. Only they would, but I would assume they get something because they keep doing it.
I wondered though, like, so one of the things we've done on the kids channel, just being transparent about same model, right? Because for kids content, we just want to make sure it's clean, it's appropriate for children, and which is, you know, harder than it sounds. For me, it's quite easy just because I have kids and I can run it by them. But generating that content. But what we found was like Ed put out a video that was the animal alphabet. And by the way, I suggest you don't go watch it because it's actually a fairly hooky song, but it lasts 8 freaking minutes and you want to just die when you're done with it. But like the animal alphabet went viral in the sense of like, for a channel has no subscribers, it's suddenly at like 14,000 views, right? And so it's just growing and it just keeps going. It accelerates. And it's because, and it's all stock footage. And it's all very simple. But to your point, it's just we're republishing that content because YouTube to us is that on the general. Like we have general videos that are just take stock footage, crank it out, make it work. But then we have the footage that we make like our show out of, and that's a higher quality. There's more thought process. It has, I mean, if you don't ever watch it, but there's clips inside of it where it's just stock footage with the VO, but it's relevant to the show in that sense. So I guess there's a model I think that's emerged for a lot of us, and I think a lot of YouTube people and personalities figure this out. You either have it seems like the gray area, which is where we existed unfortunately for a long time as Craftshow on this channel. The gray area back when we were was we put out a couple viral videos, and the only videos that really got us a lot of traction was more of the same, which was a GH5 versus whatever the fuck, right?
Yeah, I still see that on my homepage to this day. By the way,
oh, that's wild.
I think it's the GH5, and I'll give you actually. I have an example that pretty much speaks to that of the fact that I see the GH5 versus Red video every day. So the Jazz Is channel, I actually started that channel in 2013, so like 10 years ago. And we do a lot of podcasting now. But back in the day, in 2013, the big thing that got us a lot of views and still gives us a lot of views to this day are a lot of the live concert recordings that I did when I was there. And to this day, a lot of people, even when they subscribe to the channel, or even if they're not subscribed, that's the video that gets served to them. Like we do an interview with John Anderson from Yes. We do an interview with Kenny Loggins. They're getting served Brian McKnight. They're getting served All for One. They're getting served Swing Out Sister and Bob James and Lee Ritenour, and all. They're all these live shows, not the interviews. And like we did an interview with Carlos Santana. That one actually did pretty good. But like they're still getting served these older videos because I guess that's what the click through and impression, whatever the algorithm does, like that's what they're saying. Oh, these are the videos people want to see from this channel. So I get it. I get why that stuff is still served up that you don't really do anymore. It does well. It does well in the click through. It does well in the watch time. There's just so many parts of the algorithm that it does well on that they're like, this is a money making machine. Let's keep serving it to people.
Right. Especially because that first one is a fluke, and we weren't. I don't think we were monetized for the major portion of the virality on that. Like it helped us get to the back then. But now the watch time hours are insane. It's 4,000 hours you have to get to.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm gonna sound like an a-hole saying this. 4,000 isn't that hard to get at this point.
I'm just telling
if
you.
you have yeah.
Go ahead.
What do you think? Do you think it's a lot?
I do, in the sense that, like, if you have a channel with nothing and you're just launching out, the 4,000 hours to reach 4,000 hours, you literally have to put out some really long term, or they're not pushing quality content. They're now pushing long watch, or I think they're actually pushing quantity. They just want a shit ton of videos out there. They can be 7 minutes a piece and just generate them. You don't think so?
You guys are gonna laugh at this. I did a second channel as an experiment when Picard season 3 came out. You guys know I'm a big Star Trek fan. I did a separate channel so I wouldn't put this on my Reach Films channel, the Nerdy Filmmaker or something like that. And I did a Picard season 3 review. Had 0 subscribers, nothing. But I spent time on this video, and I took a lot of like bits from trailers for Picard season 3 and used that as my B-roll. I didn't get 4,000 watch hours from it, but I got like 1,500 watch hours and a lot of views, and I had 0 subs. I just chose my thumbnail right, did the whole video right, and as an experiment, it did well. Now, I didn't do any more videos after that. I did repurpose that video that did well and did a crap load of shorts, and those shorts did well as well. But like I didn't take the channel anywhere. I just kind of did it to see what would happen. So I think it can happen, but most of the people who are getting into YouTube and they're starting a channel out of nowhere, they don't necessarily have the YouTube know-how of like, oh, this is how I need to edit a video to capture people's attention.
Yeah.
So they won't necessarily get the 4,000 like you're saying. It may be harder for them to do so.
Well, even us, I mean, with the kids programming, it still takes a while. Like that's the bigger part of it is if I put out, like you did great, it was a topical video. But try and make it a piece of original content and put that out. And that's what I mean by it. I think that's where the 4,000 watch hours is tricky. Like if we're making a podcast, if you're starting out a podcast, if you get a good brand name on there, you can get some time. Like, if your first episode was Carlos Santana, it'd be like, whoa, this is pretty epic. Like that's a big, but chances are you ain't getting him first, and you're going to end up with, your buddy Jeff Worley over here who plays bass, possibly for the band Jackal. That's a true story.
Oh, really?
Not possibly. Yeah, there is a Jeff Worley that played in Jackal. I don't know if he still plays in Jackal or not.
That band with the chainsaw? In case nobody knows what that is. They use a chainsaw.
It's great.
Anyways, I think if you're making something original, so there's always that game and that battle of that. I guess this goes back to all of that. Part of that conversation was back to this point we made earlier, which was part of the reason I am just fatigued with the Disney Marvel garbage water is not because I'm making a political commentary on that. It's boring. It's all the same thing. And so it's almost like they've put out YouTube content that's just more of the same, and they're not putting out videos where I'm like, whoa, that makes me stop and want to see it. Oppenheimer, Barbie, those stopped it. Mission Impossible was more of the same. And I'm a huge Mission Impossible fan. It was more of the same.
I totally agree. It really was.
So I'm just wondering, like, that's what I'm worried about from the film side of art. Do you think that there will be a revolt? If you go back to when, not to be an old man, but to be an old man, when Jeff and I were, I guess it was 18, 19 years old is when, like, the indie film, it wasn't a genre. It was a movement back then. Like, these were filmmakers literally rebelling against the machine, and that's what we had. Because they
like
had
Favreau
to.
And, yeah, Favreau Smith and even
But it's funny that you
Soderbergh.
bring that up. It's funny that you bring that up.
Yeah,
I was there's this book I've been reading, and it's like the oral history of Star Wars, and they talk about the indie filmmaking scene in the 70s and about how it was Coppola and Lucas and Spielberg, and like they were the indie filmmakers of that time who are now like the giants they are today, but like they weren't back then.
Right.
And the magic that these guys were able to do, especially with Coppola doing The Godfather at that point in time and making that indie movie, The Godfather, become this massive behemoth giant that it is today. I do think we probably are due, especially with the strikes and everything going on right now, probably are due for a renaissance of new age filmmaking and indie filmmakers that really come out with original ideas and stories that move us. And they're not just, popcorn flicks that, you go watch action and explosions and all that, and it really has no meaning,
I really kind of hope that, to your point, I hope that that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a revolt against the entire machine. I mean, in some ways, companies like A24 are doing that. Like, you're seeing some of that. But how cool would it be? So, excuse me. I just, on a podcast we do, it's about mountain biking. We interviewed a guy that he rides for Cannondale. He's actually in Tallahassee, but he rides for Cannondale. And he was telling us a story. He has a friend that works for Specialized. So in the biking community, there's like 3 big brands. Specialized is like arguably number 1 or 2, right? There's all these famous mountain bikers and bikers at this event called Sea Otter. It's like NAB for bikes, right? So there's these really famous people there that fans can come up and get autographs. But the guy was like, the line wasn't for those famous riders. The biggest line we had there was for a guy named Normal, NRML mountain biker, who's this really big guy who's sponsored, and guess what he does? TikTok.
YouTube.
Right?
Ah, okay.
And both TikTok and YouTube, but he started on, so he's a shorts guy. That's all he does is shorts. Like, that's it.
Okay.
Fully sponsored by a huge company. I guess I'm bringing it up. What excites me, though, is if that's the current, quote, meta of the world, how cool would it be that at some point a YouTuber, someone who has put in the time on their YouTube channel to make original content that stands out, what happens when they get an opportunity to make something? That's the story I'm looking for. I want that story. Not a fan film, not an indie film, or I mean an indie, but like when someone finally goes, holy shit, this kid is putting together some really solid filmmaking. Let's give him a shot, because that happens a lot.
And I think there's only one guy. I think there's only one guy who's doing that right now, and he's in the beginning of that. He's not proven yet, but Danny Gewirtz. I think he's the only filmmaker who's on YouTube who's trying to do that. I don't see any other filmmakers on YouTube trying to actually make films and make like good-looking films. So I would check him out. He's definitely the only one I've seen that kind of gets to where you're going. Hasn't gotten there yet, but he's definitely grown his channel. In like a few years, he went from like 30,000 subs to now he's at like a few 100,000. But he's actually doing stuff, and he's doing stuff that looks great. And
so the other side of that is a lot of film content that comes out seems to be documentary style, which we know from a business filmmaking standpoint as a business, docu-style is the most profitable format on the planet. If you don't know who we are, if you go dig back through some of the old ass videos, there's like how to make $100,000 a year making documentaries. That video exists, docu-style, and we have it. And we even tell you the camera to use. It's dated now, but now you get a GH5 for like $1,500. And we've talked about it before.
Less.
We made or less. We made 6 figures off one GH5. Right. Okay.
Yeah, you can GA6 for less, but no semantics.
Semantics, right? But you can go make if you buy $1,000 camera and make $100,000, you 100 times. Like, come on, that's stupid.
Yeah,
it's possible because we did
I will
it.
say that goes into your pixel. That goes into your technical pixel peeping thing, though. Cameras change so freaking fast now. And technology is changing so fast. Once you learn a certain camera's noise floor and pixel and all that type of stuff, you're on to the next camera.
Which is why you shouldn't waste your time on it.
Fast it's going.
Yeah, and just in the past 3 months, Sony's released like 5 cameras. Now I may be overestimating, but they have. They released
and then
a lot of cameras.
They have another announcement coming. Yeah, and I saw there's another announcement coming in like next month or so.
Yeah, I was talking to my friend Josh.
Crazy.
I just did a bunch of reviews on the A6700, and then I ended up just full stop reviewing that camera because I felt like I did enough content and I talked about it, I spoke about it enough, but I didn't want to do like an actual review. I just reviewed sections of that camera, and then Sony comes out with all these new cameras, and I'm like, well, the A6700's old news now. They've already come out with a bunch of new cameras, so why talk about it anymore?
Well, so that's the thing. Is like, by the time Jeff said, by the time you're understanding this one, the new camera's out. Well, The same argument though is like, why waste your time trying to learn every nuance of the camera? Just go out and fucking shoot, man. Like, get out there and
Yeah.
do the work. I think that's the bigger catch. Is like, it's what's frustrating to me is I watch a lot of YouTubers that talk about all these things, but they're not out there getting the work, and the work that they are saying they're doing is not the hustle. You've got to be out there and not just know every aspect of the camera. Sure, you know as many as you want, but at the end of the day, the biggest takeaway is putting in the work to find the clients, to get the jobs, to prove that you're worth something. Because at the end of the day, I'm not saying you're not worthless. I'm simply saying in the business world, if you don't have a value for value exchange, you will not have money coming in. Maybe you can barter for it, but even then that's value for value. So you've got to get out there and prove that. And if you want to grow, you're going to have to show that. You don't have a choice. That same value could be, arguably, the value proposition is the same, which is to say, if you're producing entertaining content that I will lean into, like this kid you're talking about, and I watch it, then my value is I'm giving you my time, and in exchange you're giving me entertainment. He's profiting from my time, not as much as he should, arguably, but he's profiting some, and in return I get an endorphin hit or whatever. I get to watch something cool for a minute. You have to hustle for that though. And the short-term content, that endorphin hit's there and gone. So they're scrolling through the phone, it's there and gone. So let's just say, if I came to the two of you and I said, hi, I'm American Express. I have a, I'm just kidding, that's too real. We already went down
Give you
that path.
$100,000 right now.
How many?
Yeah, it was a bad.
Yeah, how many points do I get?
Yeah, right. But if I were to come to you and say, like, hey, I have $100,000, I want to make a 15-second TikTok video, what are you going to do?
Yes, please. Let's do it.
Right.
But I mean, still, you got to have the story. You got to have everything put together. It's not that simple. You know.
So
it's easy. It's easier to take the 100,000 than to actually do the work to make it worth it.
But I'd challenge you to this. Do you think a $100,000 TikTok will do very well?
I think it depends on the concept. You know, like so I can't speak to the details of this TikTok, but I can tell you that I've seen TikToks that companies have paid not 100, but you know, a substantial amount of money to create. And they've done it. They made the video. They got millions of views. If I remember, it's like close to like 50 million views on this one TikTok. But going back to everything, just because it got views, was it worth it? Did that company that paid for it see a return off that TikTok, even though it got millions of views and they did it right and it went viral? And I would bet that they don't. But I guess time will tell. But I don't think that they're going to see a return on this TikTok that was like 30 seconds long. Because this specific video there was no sales point. There was no direction of traffic. There was no reason to go buy anything.
Yeah.
So that's why I was saying before, it almost depends on what it is that you make.
But to your words, just to encourage on the other side of it, think of it this way. What you just described, though, was someone having a big budget to try and make something that felt authentic. So it's an interesting dynamic to consider the fact that, like, if someone came to us with $100K and said, hey, make us a TikTok video, I'd be like, I only need like 5 or 7. Like, unless you want me to spend the rest of the money on an influencer, right? To me, it's like it needs to be shot with a phone, needs to be vertical, needs to be all that. And then from that, it's because understanding that the medium is that. Now, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a reality we have to face. I talk about this a lot now. Me and Worley have been spending a lot of time talking about it because it comes up. It even came up with some other bigger projects that are, you know, more government funded. Those kind of projects even coming up. As much as I hate vertical video, because I come from this. My brain thinks horizontal. Horizontal is not what it is. It's not the thing anymore. If you're trying to communicate to a certain, not even to a certain group of people, you can't even say it's young people. It's internet people. Internet people like vertical video.
Most people are consuming videos on their phones. It's unfortunately a reality, but it's why vertical videos become so important, because it's even, you know, back like what, 15 years ago, we'd be like, my grandma's not on Facebook. It's too advanced. And now, like, my grandma is on Facebook and she is on her phone all the time. When she wasn't 15 years ago, it was a different landscape. So you kind of have to serve, like, you're serving all communities by doing vertical video now. It's not just young people. Like, I think there's still a stigma for TikTok that it's for young people. I think that's kind of going away, even though it's still there. But
I see more
vertical
old
video's for
people on
everybody.
TikTok. Yeah, dude. I see
Do you?
old people on TikTok. Oh God, dude. Like
Okay.
the demo I see, and now I have a very small YouTube or very small TikTok account, literally only for my other business, and it's there for me to just get metrics and do what I need to do with it, post about the show, whatever. Dude, it's mostly like the demographic that he's tapped into. My business partner on that side is a very specific demographic, and that's what he has, and it's older than him. It's closer to my age, and it's mostly women, and it's not young. I think, just like anything else when we were kids, just like the indie film scene, just like the revolt we're having, what I'm looking forward, what I am interested in, what I want to push people towards or encourage to hustle is be that first person that puts out a vertical video film that works. Figure it out, because there's no reason not to. Facebook tried it; they failed miserably with whatever that garbage was. But because
Yeah, and there was that one service too. That I know they went out. What was
Oh,
it?
no,
Started
I
with a
can't
Q.
remember the name of it.
Quibi,
Quibi.
that's Facebook. That's Facebook.
Oh, was
code.
it?
Yeah, Quibi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
The coolest thing about Quibi was the technology. The technology behind Quibi was that however you oriented your phone, the video would resize for it. But that's not hustling, and that's not putting in the effort. What I would argue is, if I'm paying you to shoot me a 15-second video, or you're going to shoot something, don't give me a widescreen shot and punch in. I'm sorry, I don't care how good the resolution of the pixels are. That's a fail from the start. The hustle is, the effort is, now it's time to get your shit together, and you got to shoot this thing vertically, because that's where it's going to do the most work, right? That's the kind of stuff that I want to see coming out of people in the modern era.
And we certainly have the tools now. I mean, you see a lot of these cameras. You move them vertically, and some of them even like redo their OS so it shows properly in a vertical setting.
Yeah.
We have the tools to do it, so there's no excuse. You're right. You shouldn't. I think the whole argument of like, oh, we're going to shoot this for multi-aspect and shoot in 6K and take a center crop and all that. No, I feel like it's not even just cheating. It's not like accurately filming for the medium that you're selecting. You should choose what medium you're going for.
So if it's an ancillary
I agree.
if it's ancillary promotional, like we were talking about earlier with the Grant Cardone or anything, even this podcast or this show, we will use AI and it'll kick out some vertical pieces and we just push them out. Though the show is arguably talking heads in widescreen, right? But the fact is that we do that, I think, makes a big difference down the road on that side of it. Because you have to frame for what your delivery is. What gets you guys excited right now? What is the thing that gets you excited right now? Looking forward to your continued pursuit of excellence as professional filmmakers.
I don't know, Jeff. Jeff, you take this first.
I mean, honestly, one of my best right now is cinematography. Like, I'm still, ever since Arrival came out, to be completely blunt, I've become such a big Bradford Young fan that it's like, it's an obsession.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when it comes to, if you want to draw it back to YouTube and stuff like that, the man is a brilliant low light exposing cinematographer. And all these people talking about these new cameras and the high ISOs and stuff like that. I mean, he's doing it with low ISO'd, Alexas, and I don't know. Beautiful cinematography still just is jaw dropping to me, and it completely puts me into a whole nother world.
Now, before you answer, Fagan, Worley, are you just saying the shot itself, or are you also considering the idea that maybe the composition of content,
storytelling, big time with it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, composition of content is a big part of it too.
Because I think at the end of the day, like if you look at a lot of this stuff, we can bust out a camera and shoot at a low ISO. I mean, we can take any of these cameras. I can move this web camera up by just lowering the ISO from 400 to whatever. And we all understand that, but that's just lowering. Imagine when you are able, Bradford, he's literally using grip equipment and other pieces. He's using an entire team of people
yeah.
to help him shape that light so dim that it barely exposes in the rightest way possible. He's not just
Yes.
turning on his camera
He-
and closing
he-
it down and picking an ISO.
Yeah, and that's 1917 also.
Yeah.
Boiled down to it. I mean, Deacons, it is one of the greatest achievements, I think, especially when you go to the nighttime in that small town. Like, it is so lit, but it is also so dark.
Right.
It's, yeah. The
You guys are
the
gonna have to
technical
see the
aspects of
creator when it comes
cinematography and
out.
the storytelling of cinematography. Oh, I want to, especially after our last conversation.
I'm going to the
That
theater
series
for
in the
it.
camera.
I'm going to the
Yeah.
theater to see it.
I am too.
100%. I want
Yeah,
to see how
'cause it
this
does- it
camera
looks
projects.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Because here's the
Yeah.
thing that go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead, Fagan.
I was just gonna say, to your guys' point, it's not that they're not lighting anything in low light, especially on the creator. But and some of the behind the scenes shot, I mean, you see them dangling like one of these China balls next to the subject, and they're just lighting them with the China ball, and they're using a mirrorless camera, and it looks fantastic. That kind of cinematography, to be able to get artistic, well lit, beautiful shots with a small footprint, kind of like Whirly. I mean, that really excites me of where the technology is going.
So is that what you would say? What is that what you would say? Is it like really has you on the edge? Is the technology of the tech coming around?
I think it's a bit of that and the AI stuff, but I mean we spoke about it in the last live stream we did. It's really, the AI stuff has me excited for workflow reasons. That as a smaller team, you could just pump out so much more content and good content. And that has me excited just because of all the work I'm doing now. But with that is the technology and where it's going, because it's not about megapixels anymore. And that's kind of it's not about resolution. It's not about megapixels. I don't know where it's going, but I like where it's going.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we're at an era where there's more tools and more productivity for creating original content and making things. And so I hope that we see, like I said, in kind of to kick off the dialogue, is I hope that we see the hustle happen where people respect what they have, they take the hustle, they figure it out. And when I say respect what you have, whether it's an iPhone or an Android or an Alexa 35, but either way, you're going to go after it and do that. It's kind of like the same thing of I still see occasionally this marketing thing that comes through that is people excited about, oh, my camera's Netflix certified. Listen, that means, we've said it from the beginning, that's such a marketing gimmick. It means nothing.
Yeah.
You know what would be really awesome that's Netflix certified? Your film on Netflix, because you made a good damn story. That's how you get Netflix certified. And trust me, it's hard.
Yeah.
I've been there. We had one on there. We went through the whole process. But like getting to that point, I think those are those kind of things of like, you got to push that hustle. And then I meet kids. We had this film expo last Saturday. And so there's, it was crazy. Like I talked from, which I know sounds crazy because I can talk forever, but I talked from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. And it was just mostly young people or budgeting filmmakers, people just stepping out for the first time and just going through all these dialogue. But a kid came along who's released 3 feature films directly on Amazon Prime. And it was not the guy that used to work for us, Jeff Worley. This guy...
And it's harder
This guy
now.
is... right, but this guy is shooting his own features, putting them together. He shoots them in like 3 to 4 months, so pretty good timetable. They're like 80-something minutes.
Yeah.
They're drama with a lot of crime and like they're like gangster type stuff. The guy's cranking the stuff out. Does it look amazing? It looks okay. His sound quality was pretty good, which is important. But the guy's cranking them out there. He's doing it. He's literally making films. And there's no reason not to. There's no reason not to go out there and do it. If you have the opportunity, the drive, or the motivation to do it, then just get out there and go do it. Don't let the... And if the story's too complex, find one that's not. Like, that's the other side of it, too, is just getting people to that point. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
the
great.
fact that you
That's great. At
can
least he's doing
list
it.
your own shit. Yeah, you can list your own movie. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you just list your own stuff? I don't know.
And there's a couple people that we've worked with or for or around that have stuff on all those. And to be frank, I only know one of them that has really good looking stuff
Right.
to it. The rest of them aren't that great looking, but they take a lot of effort. They take a lot of hustle to get them built and done, and they do it.
They're still making
I'm
it
sure they're
happen.
getting a lot of experience
one of
while
them
they're doing it too.
Oh, 100%.
I truly think, I don't know for a fact anymore, but I think one of them's still using the original Blackmagic cinema camera to shoot on. When it comes to like technology wise, yeah, it still works.
Yeah.
One of them I know for a fact still does, but I don't know if they're shooting the movie on it or not.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I ran into our buddy Sam Medina
So,
at this expo. Now
that's another one. Yeah,
he's on Pocket 6Ks and he's cranking
he
out
was
features.
using
and
those old. Yeah,
He still has them. It's funny. That guy brought me those. He had those DZO Vespids. Maybe is that what they are?
The Prime ones.
Yep. He brought them over. He had them with him, and I was like, dude, can we mount one? And he was like, oh, I don't have a Sony mount. I was like, I got you covered because we had like a little game set up where we had the Dana Dolly, and if you got to push the Dana Dolly just one push, and if you got the camera crosshairs to center on our logo, you won a T-shirt. And so we were just trying to make it fun for people.
Nice.
But he brought it over, and it was on the FX6 we were using. He brought it over. Those lenses are pretty nice for what they are, for the price. I was a little floored at how well they performed. And so we played with them. I walked around and shot a few things, and it was pretty impressive. And they're nice little lenses. I don't remember the pricing on them. Do you know the pricing on those, Fagan?
No, I know they're affordable, and I'm not surprised to hear from you that they're good because they had a lot of DZO had a lot of experimentation time with like their prior lenses that I thought were okay leading up to the Vespids, but I've heard nothing but good things about them, especially in the Komodo groups with people who have been using them on the Komodo. So,
nice.
Yeah, I don't know the pricing offhand though.
So the thing I tried to tell everybody is like people will bash cheaper lenses, but the reality of it is go get yourself a prime. Because it's going to force you to, if you're really wanting to be a professional cinema grade DP, go get yourself some primes. Because even if it's old school ones, declicked of course, because that makes life better. But then all of a sudden you're stuck with your manual iris vibes. There's definitely manual focus vibes, and so you're into a spot where after a while you'll start to learn the characteristics of that lens, and you can take that lens, especially if it's something as versatile as like an EF mount, I guess an RF mount now arguably, but you can bounce between all these different camera bodies, see how that lens looks on different things, and you'll start to understand everything about that lens that's possible. And that's where I think that kind of information is going to live with you forever, whereas the sensor may change. Optics don't at the end of the day, right? They just get different, right? Me and Jeff Worley still chasing the elusive K35s. That's the only lenses we've never shot on that we want to shoot on.
We're still
Okay.
We're gonna shoot it. We are. Going back to the DZOs, they are $7,500 for a set.
Jesus.
So I think
That's still
that's
not super cheap,
$4.
but it's still pretty affordable.
No,
I think
it's
if
not.
someone were to ask me the great question that I'm sure we've all been asked, what camera would you buy? I think I would be like, don't buy a camera, buy some lenses and rent a camera. That's what I would tell you.
100%. 100%.
Because at least
The
the lenses
lenses will last you way longer.
That's absolutely right. Like that camera's gonna be out of date by
will.
the time you get it anyway.
They're
Woo!
also gonna be more expensive, probably. I know.
Got blown up in the chat, boy.
Going back to I'm going to also go back to my Sony thing before we finish this whole thing. The announcement was actually a couple days ago, and it was the A7C2s that came out.
Yeah. That's why I was making the joke about how
They have two new
that came
ones.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that came out, and then all of a sudden the camera I just reviewed was irrelevant because these two new cameras just came out like a month and a half after the last one.
Right.
Yeah,
So what's
it's crazy how
interesting?
fast they're doing that.
Did you see that guy's video? What is that YouTuber's name? Not Pro Video Coalition. Oh crap. Anyway, he built a little box module for the Sony 2C. So he like turned it into a little box camera like this. What is that guy's name? He's bald. Oh man, he does lots of videos.
DSLR video.
Yeah, that guy, DSLR Shooter Pro, that guy or whatever his name is. He made a little box video with some 3D print. So this guy's doing something really interesting to me that instead of selling he sells LUTs, of course, because who doesn't? Even the worms in my dog's stool have LUTs. That's a Triumph the comic dog joke. That's an old school one. But like
Yeah, it is.
he's building 3D printed parts for cameras. That's genius. Like custom. You were doing some of that.
He's
too
not
for a
the
little
only
while,
one, though,
weren't you?
by the way.
Yeah, you did some, didn't you?
I did a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. I was just doing parts. Like I did like a double-sided MPF, so you can put like accessories on the back of your monitor. And I didn't sell them though. You know, although I should have. In hindsight, I was just giving them away for free. I just made the video on YouTube, and I'd be like, "This is what it is. If you want to make it, I'm not going to make it for you, but here's a link to the file, and you can go print it yourself."
Oh man.
But that I know that. So there's another guy who did something even more impressive than Caleb at DSLR, and this guy basically took the Canon M50. I feel like you guys probably heard of it. It was like Canon's first mirrorless 4K camera, and he rehoused it into a Komodo-like looking body housing, to make it a more ergonomic friendly camera. And then
Brilliant.
they put, magic lantern on it so you can get raw video out of it, and made this little box camera that's really affordable if you print everything and you do it all yourself. And it's pretty wild, the images they're getting out of it. Now, it's magic lantern. It's not a great raw codec. It's not like you're using R3D or B-RAW. But the fact that you can get this crazy looking camera, and I think they even did a conversion to where you can use Sony E-mount instead of the Canon EOS M mount, whatever it was called. But they did some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's a future of filmmaking too. The whole 3D printed aspect of changing, older cameras and creating devices that you can print if you own a printer. They're not expensive anymore. You could buy a good 3D printer for under $300.
That's crazy. I had no
It's
idea.
something I never imagined.
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting because again, we told a lot of old stories. Like people were asking questions about stuff when I was at this expo, and again, it's everybody wants to be a filmmaker, but the hustle is what's going to make you a filmmaker, and so that's why I tried to tell all these kids and at least inspire something. But it's like Worley and I, we've talked about it maybe before. I don't know if we have with this particular thing. We wanted a car rig, and they didn't exist, or they did, but a hostess tray when we were in film school was so expensive, and nobody would let you rent one. It's not like you could go get it. So you could either do the U-Haul car dolly trick, which then all your actors are slightly like this, right? Because the car's raised up enough, and then you have to shoot out of the back of a truck, and it just doesn't look as good. Suction cup things didn't exist. So the only thing we had, or that we figured out, is we built a hood mount out of a bicycle rack. So we took one of those bicycle racks that fits on the back of a window, and then we had all the hooks, and you would literally anchor it all over the car. We had this wooden piece that went into where the bicycle would go, had PVC, you'd strap it in, and then we just had a little ball head that would sit on top, and we put like this little film camera on it, and you drive around and get these great looking car shots, right? That's how we had to do things, because like it didn't exist. That's what 3D
DIY
printing allows
filmmaking.
now. That's it. That's exactly it. But that's
You're
the
right.
hustle.
3D printing is like the new version of that, where you can get stuff that's designed better, but it has to still be designed.
Yes.
But you could
That's
print it yourself.
designed for it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
So if you're talking to somebody like in the
that
chat,
brings back some memories.
oh, I know that old shooting on that Bolex H16 Rex. If you guys start thinking about a piece of advice for anybody that watches this particular or listens podcast as well, but if anybody that watches or listens to this, what is your piece of advice to hustle? What do you want to? What would you tell someone, old or young? Doesn't matter. What's the hustle?
Honestly, I'll go super simplistic, since most people who know me don't really probably think this, but being as extremely introverted as I am, just getting out there and networking with people, like making the connection with just other filmmakers. That to me is like the easiest, quickest step to doing it.
Sweet.
You know, I'm having to literally do it in a new town.
Right.
It's different.
Right.
I would say just you got to go out and make
And I
stuff.
hate to be.
What were you saying, Jeff?
That was my second one. That was gonna be my second one. I was just gonna say it's just literally it sounds stupid, but just getting out there. My second one was that, like, just to remember how to storytell. If you can just shoot things and then cut it together, like just forcing yourself to do the process. You're going to fail. You're going to succeed. You're going to do it all, but you'll start learning what you like to do, how you like to do things, and then other ways to experiment and to make it work.
To bounce off of Worley, I know a lot of people who come to me and they see my channel and they want to do stuff, but they want everything that they come out with to be perfect out of the gate. And a lot of them have no experience in filmmaking, video creation, whatever. They invest in like a Komodo, which is wild to me. But like, they make all these investments to go do stuff, but they're like, I'm only going to come out with it when it's perfect. And it's like, well, if you're only going to come out with it when it's perfect, you're just never going to come out with anything. Because how are you going to know when it's perfect? Because you've never made anything. And so go make stuff, even if it's not perfect. The whole act of going and making a short film, a film, an indie film, even if it's bad. Like, I know people who have made really, really, really just terrible movies, but they got so much experience by going and making that film that when they made their next project, it was so much better that, like, screw the old movie, that just gave you the experience to go do it. So go do it. Like, don't sit here and try to theorize how you're going to do something and spend all the time doing it. You just got to do it.
Hell yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's insert the Shia LaBeouf the little gif of do it. Do it.
Exactly. Well, I'll go one deeper just for the fact that, like, the more you do that kind of things, the more you're going to screw up and have to figure out how to fix it. Like, you're going to, I'll use a personal example, forget to record audio to something. Or you accidentally forget a shot where you thought you recorded it and you didn't record it. You'll get those little tiny nuances of what actually happens to you at certain times in your career. And then, you'll learn from those mistakes.
You want to know what's worse, and it's a 2023 mess up, is you haven't used your camera enough to know that it's going to overheat on you. If you're recording and you're out there filming for hours, you hit that 2-hour mark, and all of a sudden your camera overheats. And it's not that you're recording for 2 hours, but just for whatever reason, your camera doesn't have the thermals to handle it. But you wouldn't have known that if you didn't go out and try to do it, because you can't base your experience off of someone else. You guys have had that?
We've had that problem. But we also had we also had those two Scarlets though that never overheated no matter what we put them through.
That's true. That's very true. In fairness,
but what's the big reason why?
Degrees for 8-9 hours.
Yeah,
you know the reason why though, right?
I mean, that old.
Those giant fans, bro. Those things are like airplane engines.
Yeah. That's where we're getting. Your camera has fans. You got no problem.
Yeah, well, I tried it with we overheated on the Sony FX3 in the middle of a shoot in front of a client.
We did,
and it was very frustrating.
No way.
Yeah, we did.
Yes, way, Ted.
No way. I've heard of the A7S3 overheating, which people are like, oh, that's never happened. Never heard of that until now. But I totally believe you guys. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was wild. It was very frustrating, but we were able to recover it relatively quickly. Yeah. So, and then it didn't do it again.
Turn off the camera, let it rest, and turn it back on,
and put it in shade. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
we were in some pretty nasty.
Cool it as much
light.
as you can without like putting it in a cooler. Yeah, but put it in the shade. And, hopefully in a windy spot. Stuff like that.
That's crazy.
It did cool down and recover quite quickly.
Hey, you guys did that stress test though. You guys got to figure out if you're ever in that kind of condition again to get ready for it.
Right. You got it.
Yeah.
You totally got it.
Yep.
A couple of comments. Robin said, "My hustle right now is maxing out my LinkedIn." Yes, it is, Robin. Thanks for hitting me up on LinkedIn. And then Kyle,
I can't say anything about LinkedIn. I'm terrible at it.
I'm all social I'm bad at. Kyle at Unink Studio says, learn how to pivot when you make a mistake or experience setbacks. Don't let it stop you or shut you down. Great. That's very true.
I know Kyle's made some screw ups in his career. He's been around long enough. I know he screwed up a few times. And
but he's not allowed to currently screw up because he's working for me. So don't screw up now, Kyle.
Exactly.
I'm going to wrap it up there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Business, you have definitely screwed. I'm just saying, the longer you've been in this business, you've definitely screwed up. Like,
yeah, it's going to happen.
Oh yeah.
There's not a single person in here that hasn't screwed up. And it
happens. Just
how you react to it's a whole different thing.
That's exactly right. Fail forward is the key, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
if you're going to fail, just at least fail forward. All right, well, let's wrap it up on that. I think that was a pretty good conversation. So the takeaway for anybody listening, if you just skipped all the way to the end for the summary, is go out and hustle your ass off. Don't worry about failure. Keep going, and don't get obsessed with pixel peeping your Netflix-approved camera because no one gives a shit.
I think you summed it up pretty well.
Pretty much. Yeah.
All right, well, that's going
Shoot
to end
with
it.
anything that
Goodbye.
makes a picture and just go tell a story.
There it is. See you guys next random time on the same random channel. Well, no, we'll be on this channel. Goodbye.
Yeah.